She found them in the bathroom, at her own mother's funeral, her husband, and her best friend of 15 years, 7 months pregnant, standing in the doorway, watching her entire life shatter like glass on tile. He wanted a divorce. Said she couldn't afford a lawyer, said she had nothing. What he didn't know, what nobody knew, her adoptive mother, the woman who clipped coupons and drove a 12-year-old car, had been hiding a secret for 32 years. A secret worth $1.3 trillion. They threw her away like garbage. They mocked her at her lowest moment. They tried to take her baby. But the woman they destroyed was about to become the most powerful person they had ever met. This is the story of Eleanor Whitmore, a pregnant wife betrayed at her mother's grave, a hidden fortune that changed everything. And a revenge so perfect, she didn't even have to lift a finger. Stay until the end. Because what happens to the cheating husband and the backstabbing best friend? You won't believe it. Lesson and meaning. This story teaches us one powerful truth. The people who throw you away don't get to decide your worth. Your value isn't determined by those who failed to see it. Sometimes losing everything is how you find yourself. Sometimes the worst betrayal leads to the greatest freedom. And sometimes the person everyone underestimated becomes the one who rises highest. If you're going through a difficult time right now, remember this. The door that closes behind you might be opening a path you never imagined. Your strength isn't measured by what happens to you. It's measured by what you do next. You are stronger than you know. The champagne glass shattered against the bathroom tile. Through the door, Ellie heard her husband's voice, and then her best friend's moan. She stood frozen in the hallway of her childhood home, the same hallway where she had learned to walk, the same hallway where her mother Rose had chased her with tickling fingers, the same hallway where, just 3 days ago, the paramedics had wheeled out a body bag. Her mother was dead. Cancer had taken Rose Bellingham at 68 years old, and now, at her wake, with 50 mourners eating finger sandwiches in the living room, Ellie's husband was in the guest bathroom with her best friend. She knew those sounds. She knew both voices. Her hand trembled as it reached for the doorknob. Part of her screamed to turn around, to pretend she hadn't heard, to go back to accepting condolences and nodding at stories about what a wonderful woman Rose had been. But Ellie's feet wouldn't move backward. They only moved forward. The door wasn't locked. Grant had Vivian pressed against the vanity. Her black funeral dress was hiked up around her waist. His wedding ring caught the light from the window, the same ring Ellie had placed on his finger 6 years ago. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Then Ellie spoke. Her voice came out flat, emotionless, like she was reading a grocery list. My mother is dead. She's been dead for 3 days. Grant's face went white. He stumbled backward, fumbling with his belt. Vivian's perfectly applied makeup was smeared. Her lipstick was on Grant's collar. Ellie? Grant held up his hands like she was pointing a gun at him. Ellie, calm down. You're pregnant. Think about the baby. The baby. As if she could forget the baby. 7 months pregnant, and her belly stretched tight against her black maternity dress. The same belly that Grant had rubbed just last week, talking about names and nursery colors. Vivian started crying, perfect tears rolling down perfect cheeks. I'm so sorry, Ellie. Her voice was breathy, practiced. It just happened. We didn't mean for you to find out like this. Find out like this. Like there was a good way. Like there was a PowerPoint presentation scheduled for next Tuesday. Like there was a greeting card for this occasion. Something inside Ellie disconnected. She felt herself float up and away from her body. She watched from somewhere near the ceiling as the pregnant woman in the black dress turned and walked back down the hallway. She returned to the wake. She smiled at mourners. She accepted another casserole from Mrs. Henderson next door. She nodded when Grant's mother Lorraine said something about Rose being in a better place now. Her body operated on autopilot, while her mind split in two. The wait continued for another 3 hours. Ellie shook hands. She hugged distant relatives. She thanked people for coming. She did everything a grieving daughter was supposed to do. Grant and Vivian eventually emerged from the bathroom. Separately, of course. Vivian had fixed her makeup. Grant had buttoned his shirt correctly. They moved through the room like nothing had happened. Like Ellie hadn't seen what she saw. At 8:30 that evening, the last mourner finally left. Ellie stood in the kitchen, washing dishes. The same kitchen where Rose had taught her to make apple pie at age 8. The same kitchen where Rose had held her when she cried about being different from the other kids at school. The same kitchen where Rose had said the words that shaped Ellie's entire life. Family isn't blood, sweetheart. Family is choice. Rose had chosen Ellie, adopted her as a newborn from a hospital in Columbus, given her a home, a name, a life. And now Rose was gone. Ellie scrubbed a casserole dish until her knuckles were raw. She heard Grant's footsteps behind her. She knew his walk. The confident stride of a man who believed the world owed him something. Ellie, his voice was gentle now, rehearsed. We need to talk about us. She kept scrubbing. The casserole dish was already clean, but she kept scrubbing anyway. I've been thinking about this for months, Grant continued. Vivian and I. It's not just physical. She understands me in ways you never could. The dish slipped from Ellie's hands. It clattered into the sink, but didn't break. The pregnancy was a mistake, Grant said. We both know it. We were trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed. Ellie finally turned around. She looked at her husband of 6 years, the man she had met at a charity fundraiser, the man who had swept her off her feet with flowers and promises, the man who had cried at their wedding and sworn to love her until death. I want a divorce, Grant said. I'll be fair about custody. We can work something out. Ellie's voice came from somewhere deep inside her, somewhere cold. Get out of my mother's house. Grant blinked. Ellie, be reasonable. Get out. Now this is a community property state. We need to discuss. Get out of my mother's house. Now. Something in her tone made him step back. Maybe he saw it in her eyes. The same emptiness she felt in her chest. The void where her heart used to be. Grant grabbed his jacket from the coat rack. He paused at the door. I'll send someone for my things tomorrow. Don't make this difficult. Then he was gone. Ellie stood alone in her mother's kitchen. The clock on the wall ticked. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. She picked up her phone and dialed Vivian's number. It rang 3 times before her best friend answered. Ellie. Vivian's voice was cautious, guilty. I was going to call you. I wanted to explain. How long? A pause. What? How long have you been sleeping with my husband? How long have you been lying to my face? Vivian let out a shaky breath. Ellie, it's complicated. How long? Another pause, longer this time. 14 months. The number hit Ellie like a physical blow. 14 months, more than a year. Since your birthday party, actually, Vivian continued. The one I planned for you. Grant and I were setting up the decorations, and things just happened. The birthday party. The surprise party where Ellie had felt so loved, so celebrated, so grateful for her amazing husband and her wonderful best friend. Ellie did the math in her head. She had announced her pregnancy at Thanksgiving. Grant had seemed so happy. He had picked her up and spun her around. He had called his mother with the news before Ellie could even catch her breath. But by Thanksgiving, he had already been sleeping with Vivian for 5 months. Everything was a lie. The joy on his face, the nursery planning, the baby names written on napkins during Sunday brunch, all of it, a lie. Ellie? Vivian's voice was small. Are you still there? Ellie ended the call without responding. She walked to the bathroom. Not the guest bathroom where she had found them. The master bathroom, her mother's bathroom. She sat on the edge of the tub, fully clothed, and turned on the water. She didn't get in. She just sat there, staring at the wall where Rose's cross-stitch hung in a simple wooden frame. Home is where they love you. Rose had made that cross-stitch when Ellie was 10 years old. She had hung it in every bathroom of every house they had ever lived in, even the cramped apartment during the lean years when Rose worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. Home is where they love you. Ellie's phone buzzed. A text from Grant. I'll send someone for my things tomorrow. Don't make this difficult. Don't make this difficult. As if she had created this situation. As if she had asked for this betrayal. As if she were the unreasonable one. She sat on the edge of that tub until the water ran cold. Then she turned off the faucet and went to her childhood bedroom. She lay down on the bed where she had slept 1,000 nights. She stared at the ceiling where Rose had painted glow-in-the-dark stars when Ellie was afraid of the dark. She didn't cry. She was too empty to cry. I'm not crazy. This is happening. My husband and my best friend. At my mother's funeral. The stars glowed faintly green above her. Rose had painted them 25 years ago, but they still worked. They always worked. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaked. Just the old house settling. But for a moment, Ellie could pretend it was Rose's footsteps. Rose coming to check on her, like she had 1,000 times before. But Rose was never coming back, and neither was the life Ellie thought she had. She placed her hand on her belly. The baby kicked, strong and insistent, alive. At least there was that. At least there was still this one pure thing in a world that had suddenly turned rotten. Ellie closed her eyes. She didn't sleep, but she closed her eyes anyway. Tomorrow would come, whether she was ready or not. Morning light crept through the curtains like an unwelcome guest. Ellie had been awake for hours. She had watched the darkness fade to gray, then gray fade to gold. She had listened to the birds start their morning songs. She had felt the baby perform its usual sunrise gymnastics, but she hadn't moved from the bed. Moving meant facing the day. Moving meant dealing with reality. Moving meant accepting that everything she believed about her life was wrong. Her phone had 17 missed calls, 12 from Grant, 5 from Vivian. She didn't listen to the voicemails. She already knew what they would say. Excuses, justifications, attempts to rewrite history so they could sleep at night. At 9:15, she finally forced herself upright. Her pregnant body protested. Her back ached. Her feet were swollen. Her head pounded from dehydration and exhaustion. She shuffled to the kitchen and made coffee. Decaf, because of the baby. Rose's favorite mug was still in the dish drainer. A white ceramic mug with "World's Best Mom" printed in faded letters. Ellie had given it to her for Mother's Day when she was 7 years old. She poured the coffee into that mug. She sat at the kitchen table. She stared at nothing. The doorbell rang at 10 o'clock. Through the window, she could see a man in a moving company uniform. Ellie opened the door. "Mrs. Whitmore?" The man consulted his clipboard. "I'm here to pick up some items. Your husband arranged it." Of course he did. Grant was nothing if not efficient. "The garage," Ellie said. "His golf clubs are in the garage. That's all he's getting today." The man looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, I have a list here. Several boxes of clothes, some electronics, a few pieces of furniture. Golf clubs, garage, that's all." Something in her voice made the man nod quickly. He retrieved the golf clubs and left within 10 minutes. Ellie watched his truck drive away. Then she went back to her cold coffee. The house phone rang, the landline that Rose had insisted on keeping, even though everyone used cell phones now. Ellie almost didn't answer it, but she saw the name on the caller ID. Theodore Ashford, Rose's attorney. "Mrs. Whitmore." Theodore's voice was formal but kind. "I hope I'm not calling too early." "It's fine. I wanted to express my condolences again. Your mother was a remarkable woman." "Thank you." A pause. Theodore cleared his throat. "Mrs. Whitmore, there are some matters we need to discuss. Regarding your mother's estate. Would you be able to come to my office this afternoon?" "Her estate?" Ellie frowned. Rose had lived simply. This modest house, her 12-year-old Honda, a small retirement account from her years as a receptionist at a medical clinic. I didn't think there was much to discuss. Another pause, longer this time. Mrs. Whitmore, I think it would be best if we spoke in person. There are complexities. Complexities? What complexities could there possibly be? I'll be there at 2, Ellie said. She spent the next few hours wandering through the house. She touched the worn couch that Rose had refused to replace. She opened the pantry filled with generic brand cereal and canned vegetables. She ran her fingers along the chipped kitchen counter that Rose had meant to fix for years, but never did. Everything in this house spoke of careful budgeting, of coupons clipped and sales tracked, of a woman who counted every penny. At 1:30, Ellie drove Rose's old Honda to Theodore's office. The car still smelled like Rose's perfume, lavender and vanilla. The scent made Ellie's chest tighten. Theodore's office was in a small building downtown. Not fancy, but respectable. Ellie had been there once before, years ago, when Rose updated her will after Ellie's wedding. The receptionist led her to Theodore's private office. He rose to greet her. He was a tall man in his late 50s, with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Please sit down. He gestured to a comfortable chair across from his desk. Can I get you anything? Water? Tea? I'm fine. Theodore sat down. He placed a manila folder on his desk. His hands rested on top of it, almost protectively. Mrs. Whitmore, before we begin, I need to ask you something. Did your mother ever discuss her past with you before she adopted you? Ellie shook her head. Not really. She said she had a difficult childhood, that she ran away from home at 16. She never talked about her birth family. Theodore nodded slowly. That's what I expected. Your mother was a very private person. She had her reasons. He opened the folder. Inside was a letter in Rose's handwriting. He slid it across the desk. She asked me to give you this. She wrote it last week when she knew the end was near. Ellie's hands trembled as she picked up the letter. The handwriting was shaky. Rose's fine motor control had been failing in her final days, but the words were clear. My darling Eleanor, there are things I should have told you long ago. I was afraid you'd see me differently, afraid you'd think I lied to you, but I never lied. I simply omitted. When I adopted you, I was already wealthy beyond measure. I built a company that I sold for more money than either of us could spend in 100 lifetimes. I've kept it hidden for 32 years because I wanted you to know you were loved for yourself, not for what I could give you. The full truth is with Theodore. Please don't be angry with an old woman who only wanted to be your mother. All my love, forever, Rose. Ellie read the letter 3 times. The words didn't make sense. Wealthy beyond measure, more money than they could spend in 100 lifetimes. This from a woman who had driven a 12-year-old car and clipped coupons until her hands couldn't hold scissors anymore. I don't understand, Ellie said. Theodore took a deep breath. Your mother, before she adopted you, built a pharmaceutical company from nothing. She was a brilliant chemist, self-taught. She developed a drug that revolutionized the treatment of certain blood disorders. She sold the company when she was 35 years old, but she retained patents and made strategic investments. Ellie stared at him. A pharmaceutical company? One of the most successful startups in Ohio history. She sold it to a major corporation and then spent the next 3 decades growing her fortune through anonymous investments. Real estate, technology, clean energy. She had holdings in companies you would recognize instantly. But she lived in a 3-bedroom house. She drove a Honda. She chose to live that way. She could have bought mansions, private jets, anything she wanted, but she didn't want those things. She wanted a simple life with her daughter. Ellie's mind was spinning. None of this was possible. None of this was real. How much? Her voice came out as a whisper. How much is the estate worth? Theodore met her eyes. His expression was serious. As of yesterday's market close, your mother's estate is valued at approximately $1.3 trillion. The room tilted. Ellie gripped the armrests of her chair. $1.3 trillion. Not million. Not billion. Trillion. That's not possible. I assure you, it's quite real. Your mother spent decades hiding her wealth. She created shell companies and blind trusts. She donated anonymously to hundreds of charities, but she kept the core of her fortune intact. And she left all of it to you. The letter slipped from Ellie's fingers. It floated to the floor like a leaf. Why? Ellie's voice cracked. Why would she hide this? Theodore's expression softened. Your mother was adopted herself. When she was young, her adoptive family discovered that her birth parents had been wealthy. They used her, manipulated her, tried to claim inheritance money that wasn't theirs. She ran away at 16 to escape them. She built everything herself, from nothing, and she swore that her child would never be a target. Ellie thought of all the birthdays with homemade cakes, all the Christmases with carefully budgeted gifts, all the times Rose had said they couldn't afford something, when really she could have bought anything in the world. It was all for her, all to make sure Ellie knew she was loved for herself. There's more, Theodore said gently, but perhaps we should take a break. This is a lot to process. Ellie shook her head. Tell me everything. Theodore explained for the next 2 hours. The pharmaceutical company, the patents, the investments, the charitable foundations that Rose had funded anonymously for decades. Hospitals, orphanages, women's shelters, college scholarships for foster children. Rose hadn't just made money. She had quietly changed thousands of lives without ever taking credit for any of it. When Theodore finally finished, Ellie sat in silence. The afternoon sun had shifted across the room. Shadows lengthened on the walls. What happens now? She asked. Now we begin the process of transferring the estate to you. It will take time. The will needs to be filed with the probate court. Once that happens, the information becomes public record. Public record, which meant Grant would find out. How long before it becomes public? Theodore considered. We can delay for a few weeks, perhaps a month, but eventually the world will know. Ellie thought about Grant, about his demands for a divorce, about his claims that she couldn't afford an attorney, about his smug confidence that he held all the cards. He had no idea, none at all. Delay it, Ellie said, as long as possible. Theodore nodded. There's one more thing. Your mother left specific instruction for me. She said, and I quote, "When the wolves circle, remind Eleanor that she is stronger than she knows." Stronger than she knows. Rose had said those exact words on her last lucid day. Ellie had thought she was talking about death, about grief. But Rose had known. She had known that Grant would leave. Maybe not the details, but she had seen something, sensed something, and she had tried to prepare her daughter. Ellie picked up the letter from the floor. She folded it carefully and put it in her purse. Thank you, Theodore. There's much more to discuss, but it can wait until you've had time to absorb all this. Ellie drove home in a daze. The Honda's engine rattled over a bump in the road. The air conditioning wheezed. The radio only worked on 3 stations. $1.3 trillion. And she was driving a car that was older than some of her former coworkers. She pulled into the driveway of the modest colonial house, the house where she had grown up, the house where Rose had taught her to ride a bike in the backyard, the house where every single memory of her childhood lived. She walked through the rooms with new eyes, the worn couch, the generic cereal, the chipped counter. All of it was a choice. Rose had chosen simplicity, chosen authenticity, chosen love over luxury. Ellie opened Rose's closet. Plain dresses, sensible shoes, one beautiful silk scarf, emerald green, folded neatly on the top shelf. It was a gift, Rose had always said about that scarf, from someone I loved very much. Now Ellie wondered who had given it to her. What story lay behind that single extravagance in a closet full of practical clothes? She would probably never know. Some secrets Rose had taken to her grave, but not the big one. The big secret was out now, at least to Ellie. She sat down on Rose's bed, the same bed where Rose had read her stories as a child, the same bed where Rose had held her during thunderstorms, the same bed where just 1 week ago Rose had taken her final breath. They threw me away. Grant and Vivian, they threw me away like garbage. Let them think I'm nothing. Let them think they won. For the first time since finding Grant and Vivian in the bathroom, Ellie felt something other than emptiness. A small spark, not hope, exactly, something colder, something harder, determination. She was going to survive this, not just survive it. She was going to emerge stronger than before. Rose had given her the tools. All she had to do was learn how to use them. 3 days passed, each one longer than the last. Ellie spent them reading. Theodore had sent over boxes of documents, financial statements, investment portfolios, corporate records, charitable foundation reports, the paper trail of Rose's secret life. The more Ellie read, the more amazed she became. Her mother hadn't just made money. She had made it strategically, ethically, brilliantly. She had invested in companies that developed life-saving medicines. She had funded research into clean energy. She had bought apartment buildings and kept the rents affordable for working families. Everything Rose touched, she tried to make better. Not for recognition, not for tax breaks, just because it was the right thing to do. And she had done it all while clipping coupons and driving a 12-year-old Honda. Ellie understood now. Rose hadn't been cheap. She had been principled. She believed that money should be used for good, not wasted on extravagance. And she had wanted to raise her daughter with the same values. No private schools, no fancy vacations, no designer clothes, just love and lessons and homemade apple pie on Sunday afternoons. On the 4th day, Ellie's phone rang. Grant's name appeared on the screen. She almost didn't answer, but something made her tap the green button. Ellie. His voice was carefully controlled. We need to talk about the house. What about it? It's marital property. We need to decide what to do with it. It's my mother's house. She left it to me. You're still married to me. That makes it community property. My attorney says... It is? Your attorney. Ellie cut him off. You've hired an attorney already? Victor Crawford. He's one of the best divorce lawyers in the state. He's going to make sure everything is divided fairly. Victor Crawford. Ellie had heard that name before. He was known for aggressive tactics, for digging up dirt and destroying the other side. I see, Ellie said. I'm trying to be reasonable here, Ellie. I don't want this to get ugly. But if you're going to be difficult, I'm not being difficult. I'm protecting what's mine. Grant laughed. It was not a kind sound. What's yours? Ellie, you don't even have a job. You were fired 3 months ago, remember? You have no income, no savings, no way to pay for an attorney. The smart thing would be to accept my offer and move on. The smart thing. According to Grant, the smart thing was always whatever benefited Grant. What offer? Ellie asked. I keep the house we lived in together. You keep your mother's house. We split custody 50-50. I won't ask for alimony, even though I probably could, given your employment situation. How generous? I'm trying to be fair. Fair? The word tasted like ash in Ellie's mouth. I'll think about it, she said. Don't think too long. Victor says. Ellie ended the call. She sat in her mother's kitchen, surrounded by the documents of an empire worth $1.3 trillion. And she laughed. Not a happy laugh. A bitter one. Grant thought she was broke. He thought she was helpless. He thought he could bully her into submission. He had no idea who he was dealing with. She called Theodore. I need the best divorce attorney in Ohio, she said. Someone who can go toe-to-toe with Victor Crawford. I know exactly who to recommend. Diane Prescott. She's legendary. She's also terrifying. And she wins. Set up a meeting. That afternoon, Ellie did something she had been avoiding. She went back to the house she had shared with Grant. She needed clothes. She needed documents. She needed to see for herself what remained of the life she thought she had. Grant's car was in the driveway. So was another car. a sleek white Mercedes that Ellie recognized instantly. Vivian's car. For a moment, Ellie considered driving away. But no, this was still her house too. She had every right to be here. She walked through the front door without knocking. Grant and Vivian were in the living room. They were packing boxes together, laughing together. Vivian was holding up one of Ellie's sweaters, the pale blue cashmere that Rose had given her for Christmas 2 years ago. "She won't need this," Vivian said. "It's too small for pregnant women anyway." Something inside Ellie went very still, very cold. "Put that down," she said. Grant and Vivian spun around. For a moment, they looked like teenagers caught by a parent. Guilty, defensive, scared. Then Grant's expression hardened. "Ellie, we weren't expecting you. Obviously. We're just sorting through things, figuring out what's mine and what's yours." "That sweater is mine. Put it down." Vivian dropped the sweater like it had burned her. She stepped back, positioning herself behind Grant. "Ellie, be reasonable," Grant said. "We're all adults here. We can do this civilly." Civilly. He wanted civility. After what he had done, after what they had both done. "I want you both out of this house in 1 hour," Ellie said. Her voice was calm, flat, emotionless. "Take only what is clearly yours. Your clothes, your golf clubs, your signed baseball collection. Nothing that was a gift from me or my family. Nothing that belongs to both of us. My attorney will be in touch about the rest." Grant's face reddened. "Your attorney? Ellie, you can't afford an attorney. You're unemployed. You don't have any money. Anymore." He didn't say the word, but it hung in the air. Ellie had lost her job at the nonprofit 3 months ago. "Budget cuts," they said. She had been looking for work, but Rose's illness had consumed everything. Grant thought he knew her situation. He thought he held all the power. Ellie almost smiled. "1 hour," she repeated, "and don't come back without a court order." She turned and walked out the door. She could hear Grant sputtering behind her, hear Vivian whispering something, but she didn't look back. She drove to a coffee shop 2 blocks away. She ordered a decaf latte and sat by the window. She watched the minutes tick by on her phone. Exactly 1 hour later, she drove back to the house. Grant's car was gone. So was Vivian's Mercedes. They had taken several boxes, but they had left more than they took. Good. Ellie packed a suitcase of her own clothes. She gathered important documents from the filing cabinet. She found her grandmother's pearls in the jewelry box and put them around her neck. Then she left. She didn't look back. That night, alone in her mother's house, Ellie allowed herself to remember. Not the recent memories, not the betrayal and the lies. The older memories, the ones that hurt in a different way. She remembered the first time she met Vivian, freshman year of college. They had been randomly assigned as roommates in a cramped dorm room. Vivian had been crying because she missed her family. Ellie had made her hot chocolate and told her silly jokes until the tears stopped. They had been inseparable after that. 4 years of college, 10 years of friendship, bridesmaid at each other's weddings. Vivian had thrown Ellie's baby shower just last month, and the whole time she had been sleeping with Ellie's husband. Every memory was poison now. Every laugh, every hug, every late-night conversation about hopes and dreams. All of it had been happening while Vivian was betraying her in the worst possible way. Ellie remembered her wedding day, how Vivian had helped her with her dress, how Vivian had said, "Grant is so lucky," but her eyes had been cold. Ellie had told herself she imagined it. She had made excuses. She had believed what she wanted to believe. She remembered Grant's complaints about Rose, how he had said her mother was too involved in their lives, how he had resented the Sunday dinners and the holiday visits. "Your mother smothers you," he had said once. "You need to cut the cord." But Rose was dying. Rose was the only parent Ellie had ever known, and Grant had wanted her to abandon her mother so he could have more time with his mistress. She remembered Rose's last lucid day, how she had gripped Ellie's hand with surprising strength, how her eyes had been clear and fierce despite the morphine. "You're stronger than you know," Rose had said. Remember that. When the wolves circle, you're stronger than you know. At the time, Ellie had thought she meant death, grief, the inevitable pain of losing a parent. But Rose had seen something, known something. Maybe she had noticed the way Grant looked at the Vivian. Maybe she had overheard a phone call that shouldn't have happened. Maybe she had simply recognized the smell of betrayal from her own experience long ago. Whatever the reason, Rose had tried to prepare her daughter, had left her the tools to fight back, had trusted her to be strong enough to use them. Ellie sat in Rose's chair in the living room, the chair where Rose had read 1,000 books, the chair where Rose had dozed off watching old movies on late Sunday nights, the chair where Rose had spent her last weeks at home before the hospital became necessary. The fabric still smelled like lavender and vanilla. Every memory she had was now a question. The birthday parties on this kitchen table, the grocery shopping trips where Rose compared prices for 20 minutes, the coupon clipping sessions that had seemed so tedious as a child. All of it was real, and all of it was incomplete. The surface of a lake that hid an ocean underneath. Who was the woman she called Mom? Not the receptionist who worked double shifts, not the careful budgeter who counted every penny, but the brilliant chemist who built an empire, the secret philanthropist who changed thousands of lives, the strategic investor who turned millions into trillions. Rose had been all of those people, and she had hidden most of herself so that Ellie could have a normal childhood. The sacrifice of it took Ellie's breath away. She picked up her phone. She pulled up the text message from Grant. I'll send someone for my things tomorrow. Don't make this difficult. She typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Finally, she put the phone down without sending anything. Let him wait, let him wonder, let him think she was broken and helpless. Because when the wolves circled, the prey that survived was the one they underestimated. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of reading documents and meeting with lawyers and slowly learning the shape of an empire she never knew existed. Diane Prescott's office was in a high-rise downtown. The waiting room was decorated in expensive minimalism. The receptionist offered Ellie sparkling water in a crystal glass. Diane herself was a small woman in her mid-50s with silver hair and the eyes of a hawk. She shook Ellie's hand with a grip that was stronger than expected. Theodore told me about your situation, Diane said. All of it, including the parts that aren't public yet. And I have to say, Mrs. Whitmore, this is going to be the most interesting divorce case I've handled in 30 years. They sat in Diane's corner office. The view showed the city skyline. The desk was neat as a surgical table. Tell me everything, Diane said. From the beginning, Ellie talked for 2 hours. About Grant, about Vivian, about the funeral and the bathroom and the devastating betrayal, about Rose's secret fortune and the letter that changed everything. Diane listened without interrupting. She took notes on a yellow legal pad. When Ellie finally finished, Diane set down her pen. Your husband has made several mistakes already, Diane said. He's hired Victor Crawford. Victor is aggressive, but he's sloppy. He wins through intimidation, not preparation. He assumes his opponents will fold. Grant said, Victor was one of the best in the state. Victor is one of the most expensive in the state. That's not the same thing. Diane's smile was thin. I've beaten him 4 times. He's beaten me once, and that once was because my client lied to me about hidden assets. I won't lie to you. I know you won't. Theodore made that clear. Diane leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. Grant is going to assume you're broke and helpless. He's going to file aggressive motions designed to intimidate you into settling quickly. He's going to claim you were an inadequate wife, an inadequate partner, whatever narrative makes him look like the victim. That's absurd. Of course it is. But it's also predictable. And predictable opponents are easy to defeat. Diane picked up a document from her desk. This is what Victor filed yesterday. It's a motion claiming that your mother's house is marital property because you did not own it independently before your marriage. He's also requesting that you pay Grant's attorney's fees, citing your voluntary unemployment. My mother was dying. I quit my job to take care of her. I know, and will present that evidence. But here's the interesting part. Diane slid another document across the desk. This is a declaration from Vivian Caldwell supporting Grant's motion. Ellie felt her stomach drop. What does it say? Vivian claims that you were emotionally unstable throughout your marriage, that you accused Grant of affairs multiple times without cause, that you were paranoid and controlling, that you neglected your husband to focus on your mother's approval. None of that is true. I know, but Vivian has known you for 15 years. She knows your insecurities, she knows your fears, and she's using them against you. Ellie read Vivian's declaration. It was 12 pages long. 12 pages of lies and half-truths and carefully twisted memories. Vivian had weaponized their friendship. Every vulnerable moment Ellie had shared was now evidence of instability. This is character assassination, Ellie said. Yes, it's also discoverable. Diane's hawk eyes gleamed. Everything Vivian claims in this declaration, we can investigate. Every date, every conversation, every supposed incident of paranoia. And when we prove she's lying under oath, she'll face consequences. Significant consequences. Perjury is a serious matter. Diane leaned back. Here's my strategy. We let Grant and Victor think they're winning. We don't reveal your mother's estate until the last possible moment. We document every lie, every exaggeration, every piece of manipulation. Then we present it all at once. A trap, an avalanche. They won't see it coming. Diane stood. In the meantime, I need you to continue living as if nothing has changed. Stay in your mother's house. Don't make any large purchases. Don't contact Grant or Vivian directly. Everything goes through me. Ellie nodded. She understood. The game was being played on multiple levels. And for the first time since finding Grant in that bathroom, she felt like she was on the winning side. That evening, her phone rang. Grant's mother, Lorraine. Ellie considered not answering, but Lorraine would just keep calling. Better to get it over with. Eleanor, dear. Lorraine's voice was silk over steel. I'm so glad I caught you. I know this must be a difficult time. What do you want, Lorraine? I wanted to talk to you, mother to mother. Well, mother to almost mother. A light laugh. I know Grant has behaved badly. Men are weak creatures sometimes, but we mustn't let emotions cloud our judgment. Ellie said nothing. Grant deserves to be happy, Lorraine continued. And frankly, dear, the two of you were never quite suited. Different backgrounds, different expectations. Perhaps this is best for everyone, even the baby. Even the baby? Children need stable homes, Eleanor. Your behavior lately has been concerning. The erratic decisions, the refusal to communicate. I worry about what kind of environment you would provide. There it was, the threat behind the sweetness. Lorraine was laying groundwork for a custody battle. Thank you for your concern, Ellie said. I'll keep it in mind. I hope you will, dear. I really do. Grant is willing to be generous, but if you force this into court, well, a sigh. Courts can be so unpredictable, and lawyers do love to dig up dirt. Ellie ended the call without responding. She sat in the gathering darkness of her mother's living room. The threats were piling up. Grant, Victor, Vivian, Lorraine, all of them circling, all of them assuming she was weak. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, Ellie received a call from Theodore. There's something you should know, he said, about Grant's law firm. What about it? They've been trying to trace your mother's assets for years. They represent clients who lost patent disputes against Rose's old pharmaceutical company. They've always suspected the Bellingham estate was larger than it appeared. Ellie felt cold. Are you saying Grant's firm has been investigating my mother? And not Grant personally, but the firm, yes. When the will is filed publicly, they'll know everything. And they'll realize that their employee married the heir to an estate they've been hunting for a decade. That can't be a coincidence. No, Theodore agreed. It probably isn't. Ellie's mind raced. Had Grant known about Rose's money? Had he married Ellie, hoping to gain access to a hidden fortune? Was their entire relationship based on a suspicion that never panned out? I need to think, she said. Take your time. But remember, the will filing can only be delayed so long. We have perhaps 3 more weeks before it becomes public. 3 weeks. 3 weeks to prepare. 3 weeks to build her case. 3 weeks before the world learned who Rose Bellingham really was, and who her daughter was about to become. The days grew shorter. September faded into October. The leaves on the old maple tree in Rose's backyard turned gold and red, then drifted to the ground like paper memories. Ellie was 8 months pregnant now. The baby kicked constantly, strong and insistent, impatient to enter a world that had no idea she was coming. Theodore sent more documents, thousands of pages detailing Rose's business dealings, investment strategies, patent agreements, corporate structures so complex they gave Ellie headaches. But she read everything. Every word, every footnote, every appendix. If she was going to inherit an empire, she needed to understand how it worked. Diane called with updates. Grant's legal team had filed 3 more motions, each one more aggressive than the last. They wanted the house, they wanted the car, they wanted Ellie to undergo a psychological evaluation. They're trying to establish a pattern, Diane explained. If they can convince a judge that you're mentally unstable, they have grounds for full custody, based on Vivian's lies, based on what they claim is testimony from your closest friend. That's why we need witnesses who can counter her narrative. Most of my friends are Grant's friends too, or Vivian's. There must be someone, a coworker, a neighbor, anyone who can speak to your character. Ellie thought. Most of her relationships had been filtered through Grant or Vivian. The toxic friendship had been so consuming that she had neglected other connections. But there was one person, Charlotte Henderson. They had worked together at the nonprofit before Ellie was laid off. Charlie, as everyone called her, had always been honest, sometimes painfully so. I might know someone, Ellie said. She called Charlie that afternoon. Ellie Whitmore. Charlie's voice was warm, surprised. I've been meaning to reach out. I heard about your mom. I'm so sorry. Thank you. And I heard about Grant and Vivian. Charlie's tone hardened. That woman is a snake in Prada. Always has been. You never said anything. Would you have believed me? Ellie paused. No, probably not. That's the thing about snakes. They're real good at looking like silk scarves until they're wrapped around your neck. Charlie sighed. So what can I do for you? I'm guessing this isn't just a catch-up call. Ellie explained the situation. Not everything, not the inheritance, but enough for Charlie to understand what was at stake. Let me get this straight, Charlie said. Grant cheated on you with your best friend at your mother's funeral while you were 7 months pregnant, and now he's trying to paint you as the crazy one. That's the summary. I will absolutely testify for you. I'll testify in court. I'll testify on television. I'll write it in the sky, if that helps. Charlie's voice was fierce. I saw you at work every day for 3 years. You were the most stable, competent, reliable person in that office. Anyone who says different is lying through their teeth. For the first time in weeks, Ellie felt tears prick her eyes. Not tears of sadness, tears of gratitude. Thank you, Charlie. Don't thank me, just win. A few days later, Charlie came to visit. She brought groceries. She brought baby supplies. She brought her particular brand of blunt honesty that cut through nonsense like a knife. They sat in Rose's kitchen drinking decaf coffee while Charlie surveyed the modest surroundings. So this is where you grew up, Charlie said. Home sweet home. It's nice. Cozy. Charlie glanced around. Your mom kept it simple, huh? She believed in living within her means. Ellie almost laughed at the understatement. She was practical that way. I wish I could have met her. She sounds like she was something special. She was. They talked for hours. About the divorce, about Grant's tactics, about Vivian's betrayal. Charlie had strong opinions about all of it. You know what burns me the most? Charlie said. It's not the cheating. Men cheat. It's disgusting, but it happens. What burns me is Vivian. That woman was supposed to be your sister, and she stabbed you in the back while smiling to your face. 14 months, Ellie said. They were together for 14 months before I found out. 14. 14 months of lies, 14 months of pretending. Every time she hugged you, every time she asked about your marriage, every time she gave you advice. Charlie shook her head. That takes a special kind of evil. Ellie had thought the same thing, many times, late at night when she couldn't sleep, and the memories replayed in her mind like a horror movie. I trusted her, Ellie said quietly, more than almost anyone. I know, and that's why it hurts so much. Charlie reached across the table and squeezed Ellie's hand. But here's the thing. You're going to survive this. You're going to come out the other side stronger than you were before, and they're going to regret every single thing they did to you. Ellie wanted to believe her. She desperately wanted to believe that there was light at the end of this tunnel. But right now, all she could see was darkness. That night, Ellie received the latest filing from Grant's lawyers. It was worse than anything before. Victor Crawford had hired a private investigator. They had dug through Ellie's past, her college records, her employment history, her medical records from a brief period of therapy after a family friend died when she was 22. They were using grief counseling as evidence of mental instability. They were also claiming that Ellie had a history of erratic behavior. Specifically, they cited an incident from 6 years ago when she had called the police because she thought someone was breaking into her apartment. The police had found nothing. Grant's lawyers called it a hallucination. Ellie remembered that night. She had heard noises, strange noises. Grant had been out of town for work. She had been scared and alone, and she had done the reasonable thing. But now it was evidence that she was crazy. And there was more. Vivian had provided additional declarations, more lies, more twisted memories, more poison. Ellie sat in her mother's chair and read every word. The character assassination was thorough, professional, designed to make her look unfit for custody. They wanted to take her baby away. The thought crystallized something inside her, a cold clarity that cut through the fog of grief and betrayal. They could come for her house. They could come for her money. They could destroy her reputation and drag her name through the mud. But they would not take her child. She called Diane. I read the filing, Ellie said. I was just about to call you. It's bad, but it's also desperate. Victor is throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. They're using my grief counseling against me, which is actually privileged information that they obtained improperly. We can file a motion to have it excluded. Diane's voice was calm, confident. They made a mistake. They're too aggressive. They're not thinking clearly. Because they think I have nothing to fight with. Exactly. And when we reveal what you actually have, their entire case falls apart. A pause. Ellie, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Go ahead. Is there anything in your past that could be used against you? Anything at all? Because if there is, I need to know now so we can prepare. Ellie thought, really thought, about every mistake she had ever made, every embarrassing moment, every secret she had kept. No, she said finally. I've lived a boring life, Diane. The most exciting thing I ever did was marry Grant, and we both know how that turned out. Diane laughed, a real laugh. The first Ellie had heard from her. Good. Then we proceed as planned. Let them build their case on lies and illegally obtained evidence. When the truth comes out, they won't know what hit them. After the call, Ellie sat alone in the darkening house, 8 months pregnant. Everyone she trusted gone or dead. The whole world against her. She talked to the baby. I don't know how to do this. She whispered. I don't know how to fight them all. Your grandmother would know. She always knew what to do. The baby kicked, hard, as if in response. And then, despite everything, Ellie cried. Really cried. The kind of crying that comes from the deepest part of the soul. The kind that empties you out and leaves nothing behind. She cried for Rose, for the mother she had lost, for the secrets she had never known. She cried for her marriage, for the love she thought was real, for the future she thought they would have together. She cried for Vivian, for the friendship that had been a lie, for the sister she never really had. She cried for herself, for the woman she used to be, for the innocence she would never get back. And when the tears finally stopped, she was empty, hollow, a shell of a person sitting alone in a dark house. But shells could be filled with new things. Emptiness could become space for something stronger. 3 o'clock in the morning, the darkest hour of the night, Ellie went to the kitchen. She pulled out ingredients from memory: flour, sugar, butter, apples. She made her mother's apple pie, the one Rose had taught her when she was 8 years old. The same recipe Rose had made every Sunday for as long as Ellie could remember. Core the apples, roll the dough, crimp the edges, just like Rose had shown her 1,000 times. The smell filled the kitchen: cinnamon and sugar and warm fruit, the smell of home, the smell of love, the smell of everything Rose had ever given her. For one moment, in the darkness of that kitchen, Rose was there. Ellie could almost feel her presence, almost hear her voice. "You're stronger than you know." The timer dinged. The pie was done. Ellie pulled it from the oven and set it on the counter to cool. She didn't eat any. She didn't need to. The act of making it was enough. Morning came. Ellie woke with swollen eyes and a decision. She called Theodore. "I want to learn everything," she said. "The companies, the investments, the foundations, everything my mother built. Teach me how it works." Theodore paused. "That's quite an undertaking. We're talking about one of the most complex financial structures in the country." "Then we better get started." For the next 2 weeks, Ellie became a student again. Theodore sent tutors, financial advisors, business consultants, each one bound by strict confidentiality agreements, each one sworn to secrecy about the identity of their pupil. She learned about shell companies and holding structures, about patent portfolios and licensing agreements, about the careful balance of public and private investments that Rose had maintained for decades. The scope of it was staggering. Rose had owned stakes in pharmaceutical companies that produced medications used by millions of people. She had invested in technology firms before they became household names. She had bought real estate in cities that later experienced massive growth. Everything she touched seemed to turn to gold. But it wasn't luck. It was research, patience, a brilliant mind applied with discipline over decades. And now all of it belonged to Ellie. "Your mother left very specific instructions about her charitable foundations," Theodore explained one afternoon. "She wanted them to continue operating exactly as they have been. Anonymous donations, no publicity, no recognition." She really didn't want anyone to know. She believed that true generosity requires anonymity, that charity done for recognition isn't really charity at all. Theodore smiled. She was a remarkable woman. "I'm starting to understand just how remarkable." Among the documents was a handwritten note from Rose. It had been tucked into a folder about the largest charitable foundation, the one that funded scholarships for foster children. "I spent my life building this, but it was always for you, not to make you rich, to make you free. Free." That was what Rose had wanted for her, not wealth for its own sake, but the freedom that wealth could provide, the freedom to choose her own path, the freedom to walk away from anyone who mistreated her, the freedom to never be dependent on a man like Grant. Ellie read that note 100 times. Each time she understood it a little better. Charlie visited every few days. She had appointed herself Ellie's unofficial support system. "I saw Vivian's Instagram," Charlie reported one afternoon. She and Grant went to some fancy restaurant, posted pictures of themselves, looking all in love and happy. "I don't want to know." "You're right. You don't. I just wanted to tell you that the comments section is savage. People are not fooled by their little performance. People know, rumors spread. You know how social circles work. Half the city knows he cheated on his pregnant wife with her best friend at her mother's funeral. Charlie grinned. He's not winning the popularity contest, I'll tell you that. It was a small comfort, but Ellie would take any comfort she could get. How are you holding up? Charlie asked. And I mean really, not the answer you give everyone else. Ellie considered the question. I'm tired, she said finally. I'm scared, I'm angry, but I'm also determined. Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense. Charlie nodded. You're finding your spine? Some people never do. They just let life knock them down and stay down. But you're getting up. I don't have a choice. I have a baby to think about. You always have a choice. You could have crumbled. You could have accepted Grant's settlement and walked away. But you didn't. Charlie's eyes were serious. That's strength, Ellie. Real strength. The kind that comes from inside. Ellie touched her belly. The baby was active today, moving constantly. I'm naming her Rose, Ellie said. Charlie smiled. After your mom? She's the strongest person I ever knew. I want my daughter to carry some of that with her. Rose Whitmore. Charlie tested the name. I like it. It sounds like someone who doesn't take crap from anyone. That's exactly what I'm hoping for. 2 days later, something unexpected happened. Ellie received a letter. Not an email. A physical letter, handwritten on expensive stationery. The return address was a name she didn't recognize. Bennett Holloway. The letter was brief. Dear Mrs. Whitmore, you don't know me, but I knew your mother well. There are things you should know about her business interests. Things that may affect your current situation. I would like to meet with you, if you're willing. I believe I can help. Respectfully, Bennett Holloway. Ellie showed the letter to Theodore. Bennett Holloway, Theodore said slowly. I know that name. He was your mother's business partner in the early days. They parted ways about 20 years ago. Why did they part ways? Your mother never told me the details. She just said that Bennett had made a mistake and she couldn't continue working with him. Should I meet with him? Theodore considered. Your mother trusted him once, and if he knows something about her business that could help you, it might be worth hearing what he has to say. Ellie agreed. She sent a reply suggesting they meet at a coffee shop downtown. A public place. Neutral ground. Bennett Holloway turned out to be a man in his early 40s, with gray, streaked hair and tired eyes. He was well-dressed, but not flashy. He ordered black coffee and waited for Ellie to sit down before speaking. Thank you for meeting me, he said. I wasn't sure you would. I'm curious about what you have to say. Bennett nodded. Fair enough. I'll be direct. He took a breath. Your mother saved my life, and then I betrayed her trust. Ellie said nothing. She waited. 20 years ago, I was an alcoholic, a gambler. I was about to lose everything. Your mother found out. Instead of cutting me loose, she paid my debts. She sent me to treatment. She gave me a second chance. That sounds like her. It was her. Exactly her. Bennett's eyes were wet. And how did I repay her? I almost sold information about her identity to a reporter for gambling debts that piled up again after I relapsed. She found out before it happened. She stopped it. What did she do? She paid the debts again. She made sure the reporter lost interest, and then she never spoke to me again. Bennett's voice cracked. I've spent the last 20 years trying to earn that second chance she gave me. I never got the opportunity to apologize. She died before I could tell her how sorry I was. Ellie absorbed this. It fit with what she knew of Rose, the quiet generosity, the willingness to help even those who had hurt her, the combination of strength and compassion that defined everything she did. Why are you telling me this now? Because I know things that could help you. Things about your mother's business. Things about the people who have been hunting her fortune for years. Ellie's attention sharpened. What people? Grant's law firm, Crawford and Associates. They've had investigators trying to trace your mother's assets for over a decade. They represent clients who lost patent disputes against your mother's old company. Theodore told me about that. Did Theodore tell you that Grant was assigned to the Bellingham case 3 years before you met him? The coffee shop suddenly felt very cold. No, Ellie said slowly. He didn't tell me that. Grant wasn't assigned to your mother's case specifically, but he worked on related matters. He knew there was a mystery fortune connected to the Bellingham name. Bennett leaned forward. I can't prove that he targeted you deliberately, but the timing is suspicious. Ellie's mind raced. She had met Grant at a charity fundraiser. He had approached her. He had been charming and attentive and had seemed so interested in everything about her, including her family, including her mother. Why are you helping me? Ellie asked. Because I owe your mother a debt I can never repay, and because helping you is the only way I can try. Bennett met her eyes. I have documentation, records, things your mother shared with me before I betrayed her. If you want them, they're yours. What kind of records? Evidence of how your mother's competitors tried to undermine her. Names, dates, connections. He paused, including connections to Crawford and Associates. Ellie understood. Bennett was offering her ammunition. Send everything to my attorney, she said, Diane Prescott. I know Diane. Your mother recommended her to me once, years ago. Bennett almost smiled. Rose always knew who the best people were. They parted ways at the coffee shop entrance. Bennett looked like he wanted to say something more, but in the end, he just nodded and walked away. Ellie stood on the sidewalk for a long moment. The autumn wind was cold. Leaves swirled around her feet. Rose had forgiven Bennett, even after his betrayal. She had given him a second chance, and she had never spoken to him again. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. Rose had known that. She had protected herself while still showing compassion. She had refused to let someone else's weakness define her response. It was a lesson Ellie needed to learn. She couldn't forgive Grant. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But she could refuse to let his betrayal define who she became. That was her choice. That was her power. And no one could take it from her. The contraction started at 3 in the morning, 3 weeks early. Ellie had been dreaming about Rose. They were baking pies together in the old kitchen. Rose was showing her how to crimp the edges just right. And then pain shot through Ellie's abdomen, and she woke, gasping. Another contraction hit, strong, real. Too early. The baby was coming too early. Ellie grabbed her phone. Her hands were shaking. She called Charlie. I'm in labor, she said when Charlie answered. It's too early. The baby's coming. I'm on my way. Don't move. Charlie arrived in 15 minutes. She helped Ellie into the car. She drove to the hospital while Ellie gripped the door handle and tried to breathe through the pain. The emergency room was bright and cold and smelled like antiseptic. Nurses took over. They put Ellie in a wheelchair. They asked questions she could barely answer. Emergency contact? Someone asked. Charlie Henderson, Ellie said. She's here. She came with me. Not Grant, not Vivienne, not anyone from the life she used to have, just Charlie. The only person who had shown up when it mattered. They wheeled her into a delivery room. Dr. Foley appeared, looking calm and competent despite the early hour. The baby is early, but not dangerously so, Dr. Foley said. 37 weeks. She should be fine. She? Dr. Foley smiled. Your daughter. She's eager to meet you. The labor was hard. 12 hours of pain and exhaustion and fear. Charlie stayed the whole time. She held Ellie's hand. She wiped her forehead. She said encouraging things that Ellie couldn't really hear, but appreciated anyway. At 3:15 of the afternoon, everything went wrong. The cord is wrapped, Dr. Foley said, her voice suddenly sharp. We need to move fast. Activity exploded around Ellie. People rushing, machines beeping, voices shouting instructions she didn't understand. And then silence. Terrible silence. For 6 minutes that felt like 6 years, there was no cry. Ellie couldn't see what was happening. Couldn't move. Could only lie there and pray to a God she wasn't sure she believed in. Please, please, please. And then, a cry, thin and angry and absolutely perfect. There she is, Dr. Foley said. There's your girl. They placed the baby on Ellie's chest, so small, so red, so beautiful. Rose Margaret Whitmore took her first breath, and Ellie's world changed forever. Hours later, Ellie lay in a hospital bed with her daughter sleeping in her arms. Charlie had gone to get food. The room was quiet, peaceful, and then Grant walked in. He was carrying flowers. Yellow roses, Ellie noticed with dark amusement. He didn't even know that Rose hated yellow roses. Ellie, his face was arranged in an expression of concern. I heard about the baby. My mother told me. I came as fast as I could. How considerate. Grant moved closer. He looked at the baby. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Or calculation. She's beautiful, he said. She looks like you. She looks like herself. Grant sat down in the chair next to the bed. He was still holding the flowers. He seemed to realize this and set them awkwardly on the side table. I've been thinking, he said, about us, about everything. Have you? I made a mistake, Ellie. A terrible mistake. Vivian and I, it was just... He waved his hand vaguely. It didn't mean anything. I was confused. Your mother was dying, and you were so focused on her, and I felt neglected. But that's no excuse. Ellie listened. She didn't interrupt. She had learned something in the past months. Silence could be its own kind of power. I want to be there for our daughter, Grant continued. I want to be a family. We can work through this. Couples do it all the time. Infidelity doesn't have to be the end. The baby stirred in Ellie's arms. She adjusted her hold. Still, she said nothing. Grant's mask slipped slightly, a flash of frustration in his eyes. I'm trying to make things right here, Ellie. The least you could do is respond. Now Ellie spoke. Her voice was quiet, calm. You want to make things right. Yes. You want to be a family. Yes. You left me pregnant at my mother's funeral. You let your mistress mock my body in my own home. You hired a lawyer to paint me as mentally unstable. You're trying to take my house, my car, and custody of my child. Grant's face hardened. Those are legal matters, separate from our personal relationship. There is no relationship, Grant. There hasn't been for a long time. Maybe there never was. You don't mean that. I do. Ellie met his eyes. You can have supervised visitation. My attorney will send the paperwork. Ellie, please. Her name is Rose, and you should go. Grant stared at her. For a moment, Ellie thought he might argue, might yell, might do something dramatic that would require security to remove him. But Grant was nothing if not calculating. He knew, when he was losing, he had come hoping to manipulate a vulnerable new mother, and instead, he had found someone he didn't recognize. Good. He left without another word. The yellow roses remained on the side table. Ellie asked a nurse to throw them away. Charlie returned with sandwiches and a knowing look. Was that Grant I saw in the hallway? It was. What did he want? To play happy family. Ellie looked down at her sleeping daughter. I said no. Charlie sat down. She handed Ellie a sandwich. Good for you. They ate in comfortable silence. The baby slept. The monitors beeped softly. Outside the window, the sun was setting. Orange and pink and gold. Ellie spoke quietly, more to herself than to Charlie. I don't need him. I never needed him. I just thought I did. Charlie nodded, but didn't respond. Some truths were too important to interrupt. That night, alone with her daughter, Ellie whispered promises. Your grandmother would have loved you. She would have spoiled you completely. She would have taught you to bake and told you that family is a choice. The baby's hand curled around Ellie's finger. So small, so perfect. I choose you, Ellie said. Every single day. For the rest of my life, I choose you. 6 weeks postpartum. The will was ready to be filed. Ellie sat in Theodore's office, with baby Rose sleeping in a carrier beside her. The documents were spread across his desk. The moment of truth had arrived. Once this becomes public record, everything changes, Theodore said. The media will find out. Grant will find out. The world will know who Rose Bellingham really was. I understand. Are you ready? Ellie thought about the past months. The betrayal. The grief. The fear. the slow transformation from helpless victim to something stronger. I'm ready. Theodore filed the will that afternoon. The news broke 2 days later. Slowly at first, a financial blogger noticed the filing, then a journalist at the local paper. Then someone at a national outlet picked it up. By the end of the week, Rose Bellingham was everywhere.
Trillionaire.
Philanthropist's secret life revealed. Mystery woman behind medical breakthroughs was simple Ohio grandmother. The most private fortune in America. How one woman hid $1 trillion. The stories focused on Rose, her brilliant mind, her anonymous generosity, her deliberate choice to live simply despite having more money than most countries. But they also mentioned Ellie, the daughter, the heir, the pregnant woman whose husband had left her for her best friend. That part of the story spread even faster. Cheating husband discovers wife he dumped is heir to $1 trillion fortune. Best friend betrayal backfires. The woman they threw away is now the richest person in Ohio. From funeral affair to fortune. The divorce that will cost him everything. Ellie's phone exploded. Journalists, talk shows, book agents, movie producers. Everyone wanted a piece of her story. She ignored them all. Grant called 17 times in one day. She didn't answer. Vivian called too. Once, she left a voicemail that Ellie deleted without listening to. Diane called with actual useful information. Victor Crawford has dropped Grant as a client, she said. Conflict of interest. His firm suddenly discovered their opposing counsel in multiple matters involving your mother's holding companies. The companies I now control. Exactly. Diane's voice held satisfaction. Grant is scrambling to find new representation. No one good wants to touch his case. The publicity is too toxic. What does that mean for the divorce? It means we have all the leverage. Grant's entire case was based on you being broke and helpless. Now the world knows you're neither. Ellie allowed herself a small smile. The first real smile in months. The evidence Bennett had provided was damning. Grant's firm had been investigating Rose for years. Grant himself had worked on related cases. The timeline suggested that their entire relationship might have been a hunting expedition. I can't prove he targeted me deliberately, Diane said, but I can prove his firm had financial interest in discovering your mother's assets. And I can prove he hid that conflict of interest throughout your marriage. Is that enough? Combined with everything else? Yes. Grant is facing potential disbarment for ethics violations. His divorce case is collapsing, and Vivian's declarations are being investigated for perjury. Ellie thought about Vivian, about the woman who had been her best friend, who had stood beside her at her wedding, who had betrayed her in the worst possible way. She felt nothing, no anger, no satisfaction, just emptiness where the friendship used to be. That was its own kind of healing. Over the next few weeks, things moved quickly. Grant's new attorney was competent but outmatched. The settlement negotiations were brief. Ellie got everything she wanted. Full custody of Rose, the house she had shared with Grant, which she immediately sold. No alimony in either direction. A complete and final separation from the man she had once thought she loved. Grant got his golf clubs and his baseball collection and a reputation that would follow him for the rest of his career. Vivian faced different consequences. The perjury investigation didn't result in charges, but her professional reputation was destroyed. Interior design clients don't want decorators known for lying under oath about their closest friends. The last Ellie heard, Vivian had left town, started over somewhere else with someone new. Grant wasn't invited. They had turned on each other. Of course they had. People who betray together eventually betray each other. Ellie read the news reports with detachment. These people had nearly destroyed her life. They had almost taken her child. They had made her question her own sanity. And now they were strangers. Distant figures in a story that no longer had anything to do with her. She finally understood something Rose had always said. The opposite of love isn't hate. It's indifference. When you truly heal, they become strangers. Grant and Vivian were strangers now. They couldn't hurt strangers. 1 year later, Ellie stood in front of a building that hadn't existed 12 months ago. 3 stories of glass and brick and purpose. A sign above the entrance read, "The Rosemary Bellingham Center for Women in Crisis." It was everything Ellie had dreamed of. A shelter for women escaping domestic violence, a job training facility to help them rebuild their lives, a legal aid clinic for those fighting custody battles and divorce proceedings, a child care center so mothers could work without worrying about their children. All free, all funded by the fortune Rose had spent a lifetime building. Today was the grand opening. Hundreds of people had gathered, journalists, politicians, community leaders, and in the front row, Charlie Henderson, holding 1-year-old Rose while Ellie prepared to speak. The microphone felt strange in her hand. A year ago, she could barely speak to anyone. Now she was about to address a crowd. "My mother was abandoned by the people who should have loved her," Ellie began. "She ran away at 16 with nothing but the clothes on her back. She built an empire anyway, not for herself, for everyone who felt alone, for everyone who was thrown away, for everyone who was told they were nothing." She paused. The crowd was silent, attentive. "She taught me that family is a choice, that strength is a choice, that getting up every single day and refusing to be defined by other people's cruelty is a choice too." Ellie looked at her daughter in Charlie's arms. Rose was reaching toward her mother, babbling happily. "The center exists because my mother believed that everyone deserves a second chance, a fresh start, a place to rebuild when everything falls apart." She thought of all the women who would walk through these doors, women like her mother had been, women like she herself had been, women who thought they had nothing left. If you're out there tonight and you're wondering if it gets better, I'm here to tell you, it does. Not easily, not quickly, but it does. You just have to keep going. One day at a time, one choice at a time, until you realize that the person who threw you away actually set you free. Applause erupted. Ellie smiled, not the practiced smile she had worn at her mother's funeral. A real smile. The smile of someone who had walked through fire and emerged on the other side. After the ceremony, Ellie walked through the building with Rose in her arms. Charlie had gone to manage some last-minute details. The halls were quiet now, waiting for tomorrow when the first clients would arrive. She stopped at the dedication plaque near the entrance, in loving memory of Rosemary Bellingham, who believed that true generosity requires anonymity, but whose daughter wanted the world to know her name. It felt right. Rose had hidden her whole life, but her legacy deserved to be celebrated. Charlie found her there. "Nice speech," Charlie said. It was terrifying. "You didn't look terrified. You looked like a woman who knows exactly who she is." Charlie smiled. Rose would be proud. "I hope so." They walked outside together. The autumn air was crisp. Leaves swirled in the parking lot. A year ago, Ellie had been standing at her mother's grave, pregnant and abandoned and terrified. Now she was someone else entirely. "Have you heard from Grant lately?" Charlie asked. "His bankruptcy was finalized last month. Couldn't happen to a nicer guy." Ellie almost laughed. "Vivian left him 6 months ago. Apparently she found someone richer." "Shocking." Charlie's voice dripped sarcasm. "Two terrible people who deserved each other turned out to be terrible to each other. Who could have predicted? I don't think about them much anymore." "Good. They don't deserve space in your head." It was true. For months, Ellie had been consumed by anger and hurt and thoughts of revenge. But somewhere along the way, those feelings had faded. Not forgiven, not forgotten, just released. The prison door had been unlocked all along. Grant and Vivian hadn't been keeping her trapped. Her own belief that she needed them was the real cage. The moment she stopped needing them, truly stopped, she was free. Night fell over the city. Ellie drove home through familiar streets, past the coffee shop where she had met Bennett, past Theodore's office, past the hospital where Rose had been born. Home was still her mother's house. She had renovated it extensively. New kitchen, new bathrooms, modern heating and cooling. But she had kept everything that mattered. The worn couch was gone, but Rose's favorite chair remained. The generic cereal was replaced with better brands, but the pantry was still organized the same way Rose had kept it. The emerald silk scarf hung in a shadow box in the hallway. The cross-stitch sampler hung in Baby Rose's nursery. The apple pie recipe was framed in the kitchen. Some things were worth preserving. Ellie carried her sleeping daughter inside. She changed her into pajamas and laid her in the crib. Rose stirred briefly, then settled into deeper sleep. Ellie watched her breathe. This miracle that had emerged from the worst period of her life. This perfect, beautiful child who would grow up knowing exactly who she was and where she came from. No secrets, no hidden fortunes, no mysteries about her mother's pet. Rose would know everything. The good and the bad, the triumph and the betrayal, the grandmother she was named for, and the father who didn't deserve her. She would make her own choices, her own mistakes, her own triumphs. That was what freedom really meant. Ellie went to the kitchen and started making tea. The kettle whistled. She poured hot water over chamomile and honey. The same combination Rose had made every night before bed. Some rituals were worth keeping. Charlie had asked earlier if she was seeing anyone, dating. Moving on romantically. Ellie had laughed. Maybe someday. Maybe there would be someone who earned her trust. Someone who saw her for who she really was, not for what she could provide. Someone who loved her daughter as much as she did. But not yet, not now. She was still learning who she was, still growing into the person she was becoming. There was no rush. She had time, she had money, she had freedom. For now, that was enough. The phone rang. Theodore's number. "Sorry to call so late," he said. "But I thought you would want to know. The charitable foundations your mother established have been fully transferred to your oversight. You're now responsible for over $2 billion in annual giving. $2 billion every year, going to hospitals and orphanages and scholarships and shelters." "What happens next?" Ellie asked. "Whatever you want. You can continue your mother's priorities. You can redirect funding to new causes. You can increase or decrease giving as you see fit. I want to continue what she started, but I want to add something new." "What did you have in mind?" Ellie looked at the framed apple pie recipe, the worn wooden frame Rose had used for decades. "Programs for adoptees, help with searching for birth families, support for those who don't find what they're looking for, mental health services for the unique challenges adopted children face." Theodore was silent for a moment. "Your mother would have loved that." "I know." After the call, Ellie sat in Rose's chair. The house was quiet. The tea was warm. The clock on the wall ticked softly. She thought about the past year, the funeral, the bathroom, the letter, the lawyer meetings, the labor, the revelation, the transformation. She thought about Grant, who had thrown her away and lost everything. Vivian, who had betrayed her and ended up alone. Lorraine, who had sided against her and now had limited contact with her only grandchild. She thought about Rose, the brilliant, secretive, generous woman who had hidden $1 trillion so her daughter could grow up loved for herself. She thought about baby Rose, sleeping peacefully in the nursery, the future stretching out ahead of her like an open road. She thought about herself, the person she had been, the person she had become. "I'm not starting over. I'm finally starting." That was the truth. Everything before had been prologue. The marriage, the friendship, the carefully constructed life that turned out to be built on lies. This was the real beginning. This was who she was meant to be. Not Grant's wife, not Vivian's friend, not even Rose's daughter, though that would always be part of her. Just Ellie, strong and scarred and free. She finished her tea. She checked on the baby one more time. She went to bed in the room that used to be her childhood bedroom, now renovated, but still holding echoes of the past. Sleep came easily these days. The nightmares had faded. The anxiety had quieted. The constant loop of betrayal and hurt had finally stopped playing in her head. She dreamed of her mother. They were in the kitchen together, baking pies. Rose was showing her how to crimp the edges. Her hands were steady and sure. "You did it," Rose said in the dream. "You found your strength. You gave it to me." "No," Rose smiled. "It was always yours. I just helped you find it." Morning came, sunlight through the curtains. Baby Rose, crying for breakfast. Another day beginning. Ellie got up. She fed her daughter. She made coffee in Rose's favorite mug. She looked at the calendar and saw a full day ahead. Meetings, decisions, opportunities. She was ready. The wind chimes on the porch sang in the morning breeze. Rose had loved those wind chimes. She had hung them the day she moved into this house 33 years ago. They were still singing, still beautiful, still here. Just like her legacy, just like her love. Ellie stepped onto the porch with her coffee. The autumn sun was golden. The neighborhood was waking up. Somewhere, a dog barked. Somewhere else, children laughed on their way to school. She looked at the wind chimes, silver tubes catching the light, dancing in the wind. "I hope I made you proud, Mom," she whispered. The wind chimes sang their answer. And Eleanor Whitmore, heir to a fortune she never expected, mother to a daughter she loved with her whole heart, survivor of a betrayal that should have destroyed her, smiled. Because she already knew the answer. She had always known. If this story touched your heart or reminded you of your own journey, let me know in the comments. I read every single one. Did Eleanor make the right choice? Would you have done the same thing? Share your thoughts below. And if you haven't already, that subscribe button is right there. Join our family of strong women who support each other through every storm. Hit the like button if you believe that the best revenge is living well. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. New stories drop every week. Stories about strength, stories about justice, stories about women who refuse to stay broken. See you in the next one. Closing statement. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to bring meaningful lessons and valuable insights to our audience. Every story we share is crafted with purpose, designed to inspire, comfort, and empower women everywhere. Thank you for being part of our community.